podcasting from my closet in northern Japan. This is Reimagining Hustle, a podcast for entrepreneurial parents creating a life where business and parenthood live peacefully in the same space. I'm your host, Roxanne Murkett, a mom of two, microbusiness coach, and serial entrepreneur on a journey to prove that it is possible to do what you love without sacrificing all your precious time. Let's do this. Welcome back to Reimagining Hustle. I cannot wait to chat with my guest, for you to meet my guest today. I have Jen Rafferty with me. Jen, how you doing?
Hello, I'm so great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I feel like what you're putting into the world is gold, and I can't wait to hear about it. So can we just dive in? Will you just tell us about you, tell us about the work that you're doing and your journey to get there?
Sure. So I guess the easiest place to start would probably be 2019, at the very end of the year, right before Christmas. I published my book, which was A Place in the Staff, and I was a music teacher for most of my career. I thought that's what I was going to do. It was more like a calling than even a choice. I just felt completely called to do this work, and I was really good at it. I loved being in the classroom. I was conducting across New York State and really getting my name out there as being a teacher leader and leading conferences and things like that. And right at the end of that year, in addition to my book being launched and published, my husband and I at the time decided to get a divorce. And I moved out of my house with my two children, who were 5 and 7 at the time, the weekend the world shut down.
Oh my
And
word.
yeah.
Oh my
Oh, yeah.
word.
Oh, yes. So everything that I wasn't truly overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to that, singing was really scary, so there was this incredible grief that happened, not just with my family, with, being in a new space, but also with my career. This huge part of my life, all of a sudden, I wasn't available anymore, and it was dangerous.
Yeah.
So I was trying to figure out homeschooling my kids and trying to teach music online. It was like a whole thing.
Oh my word.
It was a whole thing. So fast forward a little bit, I decided to stay home for the next what I thought would just be a semester to homeschool my own kids, which is also when I started my Ph.D. in educational psychology, because I couldn't just sit around and do one thing. I had to, do the things.
Do everything. You
And
had to do everything, Jen.
I had to do all the So I started that. I really dove into mindset work and got really interested in cognitive neuroscience. I'd always been interested in brain development, especially as a middle school music teacher, since, they are hot mess. So, right. So, as a teacher, I always wondered, I could teach them a whole lot better if I understood how they were developing cognitively. So I've been studying brain development pretty much my whole career. And now the research was becoming more official. And what I started to realize was leveraging these ideas of psychology, mindset, cognitive neuroscience, and then I became certified as emotional intelligence practitioner. I was like, you know what? Teachers actually need this very much. So I shifted my focus. I ended up resigning from teaching, which was a whole identity shift for me. Someone who thought I was going to be a teacher my whole life. All of a sudden now I was going into this entrepreneurial space. I had to come out as an
Yep.
entrepreneur.
I
And
believe it.
yeah, that's the whole story. And I started my company, which is Empowered Educator. And now I provide professional development for teachers and school leaders that really focuses on the social and emotional well-being of the adults in schools, because we know that the kids need it. But if we're not actually paying attention to our needs as the adults, we're not actively able to get those messages across and can't show up for them the way that they need us to right now, especially now. And, you don't have to look very far to see a burned out teacher. I mean,
I-
we're everywhere.
Yeah, no, they're everywhere. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So
Mhm.
how long had you been teaching before this shift happened?
I was in the classroom in the public school for about 15 years.
Wow.
But, on top of that, I had really been doing this ever since I could get in front of kids. So, I was teaching voice lessons when I was in high school to younger kids, and I was teaching preschool during college because I was able to do like a kinder music type
Oh
class.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, teaching was and still is in my bones. I
Yeah.
just I'll do it a little bit
I
differently.
was gonna say it's you're still doing it, I can see. And what a valuable thing to come from the experience of having been a teacher. I know from many teachers in my life that one of the things that is really frustrating to them is to have these people show up who have no idea what they're actually going through, what they're actually experiencing. And so I think that that's like that brings such a valuable almost like a validating experience to the teaching world. So wow. And then, okay, so I tell us a little bit more about coming out as an entrepreneur, would you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is a great story 'cause I'll tell you, parallel to this was really understanding that at the same time, everything was kind of ground zero,
Yeah.
and I had this beautiful opportunity to reconstruct my identity. And this was something that, as a performer, I grew up on stage, I grew up in theater, I grew up as
Yeah.
and I became a teacher. You have this teacher persona.
Yeah.
And there are all of these expectations, was what I thought of how I needed to be in this world based on what I thought other people wanted me to be, right? In
Yeah.
all of the ways. And what was so interesting was the moment that I realized this was so unexpected. It was my first class as a doctorate student, and in the orientation, the assignment was introduce yourself.
Okay.
And everyone was introducing themselves by their relationship to their spouse, their relationship to their job, or their relationship to their children.
Mhm.
And I, at that point, just bawled my eyes out because I didn't even know how to start that conversation because everything had shifted for me. Yeah, of
Mhm.
course, I was still a mom, but I didn't want to lead with that. I
Yeah.
really wanted to figure out, well, who was Jen? Who
Yes.
who am I? And so it was like, kind of
Yes.
most yeah, it's assignment. But it was in that moment that I realized, okay, I can I can be who I want to be. And what do I want? What do I want in this life? What's important to me? How do I stay true to my mission as a teacher? My professional mission has always been to inspire people to discover their voice. And while it was quite literal in the music classroom,
Yeah.
how can I do that now in a different arena? So it was a lot of self discovery through asking a lot of questions. And especially as someone who held their identity as a teacher so tightly to who I was as a person, letting go of that and coming out as an entrepreneur felt very scary for me because here I had built my whole life around what I did for a living. So shifting that, I was terrified of how people would perceive it or
Mhm.
receive it or react to me. Would I be shunned from my communities of
Yeah.
teachers? I felt like I was abandoning, people who have been following me and supporting me throughout my career being this teacher leader. And what I
Yeah.
realized was as soon as I came out about it, everyone was just like super happy that I was happy. No one really gave a shit, and they were just so happy that I was happy,
Yeah.
and all of that angst that I felt, really had a turning point then, and I started becoming more comfortable saying, "Oh, yes, I am an entrepreneur. My industry is education," and that was a process that I think is something that we don't talk about very often as entrepreneurs, making that leap. We talk
Yeah.
about what happens after the leap and what
Right.
happens before the leap, but there is a transition that happens and that
Mm.
involves mourning and grief of your old life and
Yes.
really embracing the scary things that are coming next as
Mhm.
we go off into this new venture.
Yeah, and I love that visual of leap because there is that moment of suspense in the air where you go, "What have I done? What what what?" Like, that panic, right? Where there's nothing underneath you, and so that makes a lot of sense. Do you feel like you were worried? I guess part of the grief is that you maybe were betraying parts of yourself, and you had to figure out how those parts of yourself were going to be reconstructed in this new version of you?
Sure, and I think this was kind of a funny thing regarding that. as I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm totally going to be starting my own business,
Yeah.
and, just in case, though, I'm gonna be applying to all these other jobs because
Yeah.
I can't wait to tell them, 'No, thank you. I'm going to start my own business.'" That was
Yeah.
in my mind what I was gonna I was gonna get all of these offers, and I was
Yeah.
gonna turn them all down, and what was so interesting was I did not get one interview, not one,
Wow.
for any of I was overqualified for these
Yeah.
positions. And so I remember sitting on my couch. My children at the time were at their dad's, so I was alone and I was feeling those feels too,
Yeah.
sobbing. So
Mhm.
what did I do? I had just resigned. I felt great last week when I submitted my
Yeah.
letter. And then
Riding that high, right? And then the
what
crash.
what did I do?
Yeah.
What did I do to my children? What did I do? And I remember I called up one of my best friends, and she talked me through that. And I was in the middle of doing a lot of this mindset work, and truly that was the stuff that allowed me to navigate through it and trust, have so much self-trust. If I'm not betting on myself,
Mhm.
then who else is? And
Yes.
and I believed so much in this vision that I had. I first of all had to figure that out, right? and
Yeah.
and if I'm not going to bet on me, who else is going to bet on me? And once that decision was made, then the path became clearer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so powerful. And I feel like too, you mentioned that having almost that like breakdown in that first class that you took, right? Of having that, what do you want, right? I feel like you just described both pieces of this, of like that realization that you weren't listening to you at your deepest core, and then making a decision as to what that was going to look like. I feel like that's so powerful. I wonder if I could like pick your brain, as it were, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because we talk a lot about mindset work in the coaching community, right? I talk about it with my clients. I know you talk about it with yours. We've already talked about it a lot. But I feel like mindset work, like that phrase mindset work, kind of gets thrown around a little bit, almost like it's almost buzzwordy at this point in the game. And so I would love for you to describe maybe like what does that look like? And I know there's so much that goes into mindset work. But like if you could describe it to someone who's like, okay, but like what is it really? What would you say? How would you answer that question?
So I look at it through the lens of neuroscience because
Okay.
it's fascinating to me. We can't, the biggest tool that we have exists between our ears. Yet we have no formal training in how that works. And so up until recently, I just thought that I had a brain and like I have an elbow and 2 feet,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I could like do some cool things, but that was just like part of how this, you know, meat suit operates.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Um, I didn't understand that I could direct my brain because I am not my brain. I'm a person who has a brain. So just like I can like wave hello to somebody or kick a ball, once I understood how my brain worked, I can actually be in the driver's seat instead of my brain. So mindset work to me is understanding how your brain works in regards to its neurobiology and how really it tries to keep you safe
Yeah.
in its job. And so the reason why we have such a difficult time getting out of our comfort zone is because of that biology. And
Mhm.
so understanding what's happening physiologically and neurologically, you can actually remove yourself from it, from the situation, from the feeling, from the emotion, and look at it objectively. So
Mhm.
you, as the person who has the brain, can make decisions instead of just going on autopilot. Now, there's a second piece to this too, and this is not the elevator pitch. This is like
Yeah. But
this is
it's
the
okay if it
elevator.
is. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is the elevator pitch that's like up to, the Empire State Building if I'm talking to someone about what
Yeah.
what is mindset. But the second part of this is also somatic work, which is I think where a lot of mindset work falls short, is
Mhm.
that we also have a body, and unless we're bringing our body along, it doesn't matter how many positive affirmations you tell yourself or, change your thoughts. it's not actually going to work unless you understand that you need to incorporate and integrate practices to bring your nervous system and your body along for the ride for sustainable change.
Mm. Yes, I love that you pulled that piece of it into because we so often don't talk about that piece. And it
Mhm.
really is that supportive. I mean, it is one whole system, right? Like we we are functioning in one whole system. It's so interesting. I was working with a personal trainer, and she mentioned that if you're going to try to correct posture, right? So if you're going to try to stand up a little bit straighter, we think mentally we've got to work on our back muscles, which is true, yes, to a certain extent, but we forget that we also have to work on our chest muscles because those expand, right? And that's going to be helpful with posture. And I feel like that's exactly what you just described here, right? Is yes, it is going to take a lot of this recognizing you've got to act versus react, and that you can be. I love how you said in the driver's seat of your brain, but that there is this somatic piece as well that's so important. So thank you for indulging me a little bit there with that with that question. I love it so much. So okay, so in all of this, you taught for 15 years, you went through this huge identity change, life change, all in the middle of a global pandemic because why not, right? What does success look like to you now, maybe versus what it used to look like? What is it? Where is that vision of success now?
Oh, I love this question. It's so juicy. So, as a as a perpetual student, right? I mean, I have been going to school every September.
Yes.
It's 4 years old, right?
Forever. Yeah. Yeah.
Until very recently when I decided to leave the classroom. You know, I would have told you back then that success was, how many A's I got,
Mm.
how many accolades I received, how many good job, Jens, I got, especially as a performer,
Yeah.
a lot of time. I mean, outside of the academic space where we're taught, you need to get a certain amount of A's, you need to get this grade, you need to get this ribbon, and this pats on the back and this and that. And then on top of it, being a performer, you know, m even my ability to stay in my college curriculum, my course, I had to re-audition every year
Yeah.
for a panel of professors who would tell me whether or not I was good enough to stay in the program.
Yeah.
And so, the way that I defined success was very much external
Mhm.
because I needed validation to know that I was okay, not just okay, but, like, better than okay, and probably, like, better than the next person. That was also very important to me. It was important to my parents, and it was important to the other people around because I could say, "Hey, look what I did. See the thing? I got the
Yeah.
thing."
Yeah.
You know? Now, it is a complete it had to have changed
Yeah.
because none of the metrics were relevant anymore. There
Mm.
were no metrics. When, we were all in a pandemic, we totally just evened out the playing fields for
Yeah.
everybody at that time. So the things that we thought were important all of a sudden weren't. And I think the challenge is now that things are kind of going back to the way they were. No, they're not the same, but they're going back to the way that we're not in isolation like we
Right.
were, right?
Right.
What's happening is we're placing those same metrics again, and they're not working.
Yeah.
For me, success, and this is what I teach as well, is feeling the way that I want to feel for as many hours of the day as possible. And I make choices throughout my day to align with that as
Mhm.
much as I can. And that takes an incredible amount of personal responsibility and self-awareness. So again, I'm in the driver's seat. So when I go to bed at night, I know that whatever I did, it's enough.
Mhm.
I was present with my kids. I was present with my clients. I was present when I was eating my sandwich.
Mhm.
And it's all okay. And I can sleep well.
Mhm.
It's not about the number in my bank account. It's not about the number of contracts they have. It's about how I feel. And that is radically different than it was before.
That is one of the most succinct and fascinating answers I've heard to this question. And I've asked a lot of people this question, right? I've interviewed a lot of people for the podcast. It's a fun question. It's a fun party question, whatever. But to really drill it down that specific, to feel the way you want to feel for as many hours of the day as possible is like you've blown my mind with this one. You've blown my mind with this one because it's like, well, could it be that simple? Could it be that
Sure,
simple? And
it
yeah.
can be.
Mhm.
Is it easy?
No. No.
But, that's where the personal responsibility comes in because
Yeah.
I I am the only person responsible for how I show up.
Mhm.
So, when my kids are acting out, I have a choice. When the contract falls through,
Yeah.
I have a choice. When it's raining outside and I really just couldn't wait to go for a walk and it's been raining for 7 days in a row and I can't get outside, I have a choice. You know what I mean?
You just
Uh,
described my summer, Jen.
I see you. I see you.
Yeah.
And that is it's empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And no one
Wow.
can take that away from me. That's
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun to hear you say that. It's especially fun to me as a complete sidebar. I grew up around the performing world, right? So my dad owns a recording studio, and that's the world that I grew up in. And so all my siblings involved in musical theater, we were all performers, all musicians. So I get this, right? Like you're speaking to me on like my core, like my innermost child level, because we look for so much validation, so much validation. It and we all do it. We all do it. And so it's so, oh, I love this. I love this so much. Okay, Jen, we got to shift a little bit and talk about parenting during all of this, right? Because that adds a fun layer. So, okay, so we're gonna remind everybody, we're gonna set the stage. So the weekend the world shut down, you and your 5-year-old and 7-year-old restarting life. And this is like, as you described your story, that feels like this huge pivot point. Like as you kind of described it, we had all the buildup, and then that was the weekend, and then everything changed. So, how has being a parent during all of this changed you?
Hmm. So I don't know that being a parent during I don't know that I can answer that question because I am that way.
Okay.
Because I am in it, but I can't answer it, how has it changed my kids?
Ooh, okay.
Because how has it changed me? I don't know that I can be objective enough to see what the change is.
That's fair.
I know that when I first made that transition,
Yeah.
I I tried well, okay, I'm thinking about going back to that weekend.
Yeah.
I wanna be as succinct as possible, so feel free to cut any of the
You're good.
you know,
This is where the juicy stuff comes from. So like
yeah,
you're
it's
good.
this is a really great question. I remember trying to make the transition as easy as possible for my kids.
Mhm.
But what happened was because the divorce, the moving, the pandemic happened the same time,
Yeah.
we were all processing everything at
Mhm.
the same time. So someone asked me recently too, how did your kids handle the divorce? Like
Yeah.
did they go through some stuff? And my answer to that question was, I don't think so. Like, they were transitioning to all of this at the
Yeah.
same time. And we all were. I was
Yeah.
frightened too. I was scared too. I was alone too. And they didn't have the, well, I have to go to school now. And all of a sudden, mom's not home. And now I'm going to dad's house. And I'm going, nothing. We just were home
Yeah.
together, the three of us, for 18 months
Yeah.
in a mine house.
Remember when we thought it was gonna be like 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so they
Oh.
saw me go through a transition.
Yeah.
They saw me transition from being an overly stressed, pressurized, controlling because I was trying to keep everything,
Yeah.
everything safe, unhappy
Mhm.
person to the grieving process of, figuring all of this out. And, when you're together for that long, there isn't, I'm going to be upstairs for a little while you're downstairs and I'm crying my eyes out upstairs.
Right.
We're all in the same space. Like they know, they see,
They're gonna see the messy.
oh yeah, they see all of it. Maybe I'd get in my closet and they'd have 20 minutes of cry time, but my daughter would find me.
Yeah.
you
Always,
know,
right?
always, yeah. But I got to a point where I was like, but it's okay, I think, right? Isn't this okay that they can see me having these
Yeah.
emotions? And when I got comfortable with that, while at the same time doing all of this work with emotional intelligence, with neuroscience, with mindset, I was able to create a language with them where feelings were okay. So you're mad about something? Great. Like let's duke it out. Here's a
Yeah.
punch bag. Here's, go scream in your pillow. And we developed these really good ways to manage our emotions.
Mhm.
And they've seen me now grow a business.
Yeah.
And my daughter said to me at one point, Mom, I think your next book should be about how to live your best life.
Oh,
I'm thinking
yes.
to myself, girl, yes, I think maybe it will be. And
Yeah.
but she sees me.
Yeah.
And so, they have seen me in a new way. They've seen me blossom into someone authentic. Part of my journey too is, I met a woman and fell in love with a woman. And, I'm now that's also now my journey. And,
Yeah.
having them see me just be me has been tremendous for them to
Yeah.
figure out themselves,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you know?
yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, you talk about that class that you were in, right, with the breakdown and everyone was identifying themselves as a role. You've done that for your kids too, is you've given them a vision of you as more than just your role as a mom, right?
Oh, 100%.
They get to see you as a person, and they get to see you in all these roles as well, as someone who is, someone falling in love. They get to see you as someone growing a business. They get to see you in all these roles, but also just being a human. And what a gift. What a gift to them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is. And, for a while, I held on to that mom guilt. Am I doing enough? Am I damaging them? Was this a mistake? You
Mhm.
know, all of it. But again, that's just knowing what I know and going back to that mindset piece,
Yeah.
right? That's my brain being like, hey, Jen, we have no evidence of you being an entrepreneur and a mom and doing all these things and surviving. Shut it down. Shut it down. And, knowing that that voice in my head is fear, it's my biology.
Mhm.
Well, then I could start to work with it a little bit and dance with it and understand, okay, I'm grateful for you. Thank you. You've kept me alive. I'm here. I'm talking to you today. So it's
Yeah.
doing its job.
Yeah.
But I don't thank you for this one. I got this one. And figuring out how to move forward in that way, that's the secret sauce.
Oh, yeah. Oof. Ooh, I love it. So do you still experience guilt ever?
Um, Not like I used to, and I
Okay.
recognize it as soon as I feel it. What's important about the somatic work and understanding your body is where I usually feel guilt is in my stomach, and all of a sudden I'll get this drop and this dip. And so when I feel that, that's usually the first indicator, and I'll pause and I'll, calm my nervous system down. I'll take a couple breaths and, "Oh, what's that about?" Okay, and I get really curious about that feeling.
Mhm.
And again, once I can be objective about it, I can work my way through it. The guilt stays when it's habitual. It's something that, you know, especially mom guilt is a tradition. And
Yes.
the way I feel about tradition, it's peer pressure from dead people. That's tradition.
Oh, yes.
That's tradition. And
Yes.
if this isn't serving you and supporting you to live your best life,
Mhm.
then you really need to question whether this is a tradition you want to keep.
Mhm.
And guilt is something, especially moms, especially teachers, especially women. Like if you fit into all three of those categories, or even just one of those categories, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we wear our guilt and our martyrdom like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And, look at all we're doing. And we talk about it as if this is something that, should be honored in some way. But at the end of the day, guilt is a choice. It is a choice. And you can continue to choose guilt, or you can decide that it's not serving you, and you can set it down, and everyone's gonna be okay.
Mic drops from Jen. Whoo! Yes. Oh, yes. That's honestly one of my favorite questions to ask people because there are a lot of takes on guilt, right? It's kind of this hot topic. And so I love that take. I love that take. Jen, what do you wish people knew about being a parent, being an entrepreneur? And we can pull in this teacher aspect of it too, all at the same time. What do you wish people knew?
There's not a right way. There's no supposed to, there's no shoulds. And as soon as you start shitting on yourself, that's when you know that you're living someone else's expectations. And we've all felt that.
Yeah.
I should be further along. I shouldn't be reacting like this. I shouldn't supposed to be blah blah. No. You
Yeah.
know, I think the most important thing is honor yourself where you are, be where your feet are, and love on yourself so hard because what you're doing is enough. And another one of the phrases that I keep at my desk all the time is enough is a decision, it is not an amount, and you are the only person that gets to decide whether or not it's enough. That's it. And and that is something that I look at every day because we are so used to just looking over at other people's lanes and seeing what they're doing.
Yeah.
But if you're in someone else's lane, who's in your lane?
Mhm.
Stay in
I
your
like
lane.
that. Man,
You're enough.
Jen, you're like dropping like nugget after nugget after nugget after nugget. Oh man.
Good.
Jen, I like you. You're a fun one.
Oh, I like
Oh,
you. This is
this is
great.
fun. Okay, so I want to ask you a question about the name of the podcast, right? So the name of the podcast is Reimagining Hustle, and the reason that it's named that is when I started my entrepreneur journey, I was not a parent, and I very much bought into the like bro marketing hustle culture. Like it felt good to me, right? That hustle, 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 go, go, go. Like the harder you work, the harder you play, but you'll never play because you're always be working so hard, right? That nonsense, nonsense. And then I had my first child and my whole world stopped. And I realized what I was doing was not sustainable. And so I've been on this quest to reimagine what hustle can look like since then. And so I would like to know, how do you in your realm reimagine hustle?
That is not even a word that I use ever anymore. And it was, especially as a musician,
Yeah.
right? And, I did know that about you because I did some research on
Yeah,
you.
that's right. That's
Yeah, I
right.
know you're a studio musician. What do you play, by the way?
I'm a violinist.
No, fantastic.
Yeah.
So, um, someone said this to me a while ago, and I always think about this. I guess if I were to describe hustle, it would be like this: the more walks you take, the more money you make. Take your time for yourself because the more spacious you feel, the easier it is going to be to sit down and do the thing. We can't be creative and problem solve when we're feeling activated. Again, going back to biology, I can't talk about anything without talking about brains.
Oh, I am here for it. I'm so fascinated by it. Don't stop. Keep telling us.
If you are activated and you are sitting in that fear response, which comes anytime you're feeling stress, you don't have access to the part of your brain that you need to organize, prioritize, be creative, and problem solve. So you're staring at your computer, pushing your mouse around a little bit, trying to look like you're being productive, spending 10, 13, 15 hours of your day just trying to get shit done. But again, if you take a look at what the my definition is of success, how does that align? It doesn't. And so I guess, hustle to me is really about alignment. Alignment to who you want to be, the vision of your future self, and how you want to feel. And if you can do that and swing that, I think you've got it made.
That's a great take. That's a
Yeah.
great take. This is so fun. Okay. We need to learn where we can find you online. But before we do that, will you please give us a 30-second pep talk for other parents on this entrepreneur journey? If you want to gear it towards teachers, that's fine. Whatever feels right to you in this moment, right? So we'll be where your feet are right now. Will you give us a pep talk right now?
Sure. Well, if you are in a state where you are feeling just constant overwhelm and frustration and stress and burnout. It is not a sustainable way for you to live your life. And it's okay. And it's not your fault because this is how we were raised, because this is how our parents were raised and how their parents were raised. But we know better now, which means we can do better. The most generous thing you can do for the people in your life is take care of yourself. Because when you win, everybody around you wins. When you prioritize your own well being, you can show up for your family, you can show up for your partner, you can show up for your clients and for all of the people that need you in this world. And so you can have that impact that you really wanted to make. It has to come from a place of self-regulation, which means you need to be the number one priority. And drop the guilt, because that is capital T truth. You get to be your number one priority.
I don't have enough mics for you to drop today. Jen, thank you. My goodness, like, what a gift you've given to me today. So
Aw.
thank you. I really appreciate it. We need more of you. Tell us where we can find you online.
So the easiest place is my website, empowerededucator.com. And if you go to the resources page, there's a bunch of free resources on there about how to get to this space where you're dropping guilt and feeling great all day and navigating through some of the stress that you might feel. And then the other place is my Facebook group, actually, which is Empowered Educator Faculty Room. And that's a place where you can get a lot of content from me. I go in there live quite frequently, and it's a really great community of other people who are doing this work actively to just show up as their best selves.
Amazing. And we'll make sure that we link everything in the show notes. Jen, thank you for the gift of your time today, the gift of your wisdom and your education and your experience and your story. Thank you for sharing all of that with me and with us today. So thank you for your time.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
Thanks for listening to Reimagining Hustle with Roxanne Merkett. If you like the show and want more, check out reimagininghustle.com and please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week with another episode. See you soon.